Greetings all, this is Rick Levine with the December astrological forecast for the last month of 2024. It's been very interesting. I've been trying to set this up for the last hour or so. I am losing light. I am recording this from India, and the time here right now is approximately 3:41 a.m. Redmond, Washington time. That's Pacific time, but it's about 5:41. It's about 5:20 actually, India time in the evening. So I am losing light, and by the time we get toward the end of this, it may be completely dark. But I'll do my best to kind of follow through. We also may have some ambient noises from construction and or birds or people, but it's the best I can do from here. Now, I do have a couple of very important announcements to make. One is that this is going to be a little different than usual. There's going to be a little less circles and arrows and editing than normal, and it'll maybe a little bit shorter than normal. But I will do a mid-month update that normally only goes out to Patreon solar subscribers at $3 a month. If you want to get that on other months, you're certainly welcome to join Patreon by going to patreon.com/Rick Levine. However, because this is going to be a little bit different than normal on the 1st of December, when I do my mid-month update, I will be back in the United States from my home office. I get back on the 18th. It probably won't be posted until the 20th. So it's going to kind of be a winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, southern solstice in the southern hemisphere update that I'll cover the last week or so of the month, the holidays, and I will also do an overview for 2025. That will go out to everyone as kind of a compensation or consolation for this shorter version that I'm doing here from Goa, India, in the midst of a fantastic 11-day astrological initiation to astrology retreat. I'd also like to announce that we will be doing this again next year. It's going to likely be the last time we do this initiation to astrology program. The following year, we're going to be doing more advanced workshop, and that's yet to be announced. We'll be announcing the dates of next year's. It'll be this time of year, November, December, and we'll keep you posted on that. But we have 22 people here. They're having an amazing time, and I'll have some updates on that in the future. Okay, a couple of quick announcements today. Number one is, as you know, if you sign up for my mailing list, that puts you into an entry for getting a free harmonics reading or a reading on your natal chart, including the harmonic aspects. This month's winner is Carmela Hilvers, and we will be connecting with her and setting up that scheduled private reading consultation. And in order to join the mailing list, I promise you'll never be overwhelmed with marketing information, with sales pitches. However, it's a good way of keeping informed with what I'm up to, and also some of the astrological transitions and changes going on. The way to get to the way to sign up for that mailing list is to go to my website, which is www.ricklevineastrologer.com, and scroll down and you can sign up there. That's that. So mailing list. Secondly, I want to make sure that everyone knows that I will not be doing an astrology night on December 5th, which would be the first Friday night of December, because I'm still in the midst of teaching this retreat, and of course our hours are so far apart, it would be difficult for me to do that. However, I will be back at Soul Food on the first Friday night of January. That's January 4th. If you live in the Seattle, Redmond, Seattle area, come on by Soul Food Coffee House in Redmond, Washington. It's going to be a bit of a party because it's going to be a New Year's party. I'm going to be talking about and focusing on not only January, but on the entire year of 2025. And if you're not in the area and you can't come by, check out my live feed, and that will become available on my YouTube channel, which you can get to always by going to youtube.com/Rick Levine, and that's @Rick Levine, which is the way YouTube does it, youtube.com/@Rick Levine. Also, another quick announcement, and that is that I will be doing workshops and a lecture for the Washington State Astrology Association, and that's a monthly meeting in Seattle. The Washington State Astrology Association is actually the oldest of all the state associations, and they meet on the second Thursday night of every month. And in January, I will be the featured speaker. My subject of talking will be there are no bad astrology charts, there are no bad aspects, and there are no bad transits. It'll be an interesting talk. That'll be followed by a Saturday workshop that will be a deep dive into working with aspects, including integrating harmonic aspects like quintiles and septiles into your normal chart interpretation. All right, so that's that. I also want to announce that in February 14th and 15th, I'll be doing an evening event and then an all-day Saturday event. This is a special event that will be just north of Santa Barbara, actually in Buellton. It's just the next exit, I think, off the 101, driving from LA up north to Santa Barbara. And we'll have more information on that, but you may want to make a note if you live in the LA area or in the Santa Barbara area. The February 14th Friday night event will be about relationships and astrology because it's Valentine's Day, and it's at a beautiful facility. I'll have more to say about that next month. And then the Saturday, all-day Saturday event will be really about how do we use astrology in our everyday life for the most effective benefits, getting the benefits out of astrology. Also want to mention that on March 7th through 9th, I'll be a speaker and doing a pre-conference workshop at Convergence 2025. 24 astrologers from around the world will be there. This will be the big conference of 2025. And you can find out more about that, including the speakers, the program, and even registration. It's in Orlando, Florida. I think I said that. And that's Cosmic Patterns Conference, all one word, cosmicpatternsconference.com. And I'll see many of you there. I've also mentioned before that I'll be speaking at the Portuguese conference, and that's on May 9th through 12th. That'll be in Porto this year. And more information will be in the link below, in the description below. The first comment I'll pin to the top, and that will have all of the live links for this. Also, one more important thing that I want to make sure that you know about, I'll bring this up again in January's talk and the January forecast, even in the mid-month, and that is I'm going to be teaching for a second time at Kepler College. I'll be doing my introduction to harmonic aspects, and this is a deep dive into using harmonic aspects, much deeper than the Saturday workshop that I'll be doing for the Washington State Astrology Association. That course is 5 weeks long, and it begins on January 12th, and I'll have that link in the first comment below also. And I think that advanced registration for that ends on December 29th. So if you're interested, you can save a few bucks by registering prior to December 29th. More information on that will be at the link below. I think that's about it. I mentioned that we will be doing Goa again next year. There's, I think, probably other things, but that's going to be it for now. I want to get into the material. The sun is going down and it's going to get progressively darker in here. I am outside in this beautiful yoga shala that's right now empty and mine. It's a very lovely place. But let's jump into the astrology of December. And I want to mention that all charts that I'm doing, all times that I will be referencing, will be from my home in Seattle, in Redmond actually. So all times that I give will be for Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 time zones off of Greenwich Mean Time. You need to adjust your time zone accordingly. But the fact of the matter is that even though we may be looking at charts for noon in Seattle, that those charts for noon in Seattle will be for here at 1:30 a.m. the following day because of time zone changes. So let's start by looking at the chart for December 1st. Now, the interesting thing about doing a chart for December 1st is that the new moon occurs here on December 1st. Now, the new moon actually occurs in the United States and in Europe on November 30th, and I covered that in great detail both in my mid-month update for November and in the November forecast. But here in India, the new moon actually occurs on December 1st. So I am actually recording this on the evening of November 30th prior to the new moon. But here the new moon will occur, in Seattle, on the West Coast, it will occur on November 30th at 10:21 p.m. And here, because the time is 13 and a half hours later, that means it's going to occur here tomorrow at just before noon on Sunday, on Sunday, December 1st. So I'm just going to mention the fact that wherever you are in the world, we are coming off of a Sagittarius new moon that is moving into a square with Saturn, and we may feel that heaviness and the weight of that Saturn square. There are other things that I talked about more in depth prior, and I'm not going to spend time there because I'm going to begin this chart, or I'm going to begin the real talk here, going to December 1st. And we can see that at noon on December 1st, the moon has moved along away from the new moon. It's at 16 Sagittarius, already past the square to Saturn. In fact, moving into an opposition with Jupiter. I think it's also interesting to note that we have Mercury trining Chiron on the first day of the month. It's getting dark enough here that I already have to put my flashlight on, so we'll see how the lighting goes here. This will be interesting. So that the first day of the month on December 1st, we have a Mercury at 19 degrees of Sagittarius trining Chiron. Good day for communication, especially healing old wounds or learning or teaching things. But the other thing that's going on as we move this chart ahead a day, we can see that Venus is coming into an exact trine to Uranus. We might actually feel this also on the 1st, but this is a bit exciting. In the heaviness of what's going on out there in the world, there's a little bit of perhaps sudden breakthrough, the attraction Venus to those things that are different, that are out of the box. I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. Like I said, I'm going to drill down a whole lot deeper in the mid-month, but I do want to get what's important going on. That Venus trine Uranus also, though, represents an attraction and a desire to not just do the same things. We want to break out of the box. We want to do something that is beyond the normal way in which we do things. We like things that are different. We want to experiment. We want to try something new. Also on December 2nd, the moon moves from Sagittarius into Capricorn, and that'll remain in Capricorn as the moon does, for a couple of days. As we move through the 3rd, there's no exact aspects occurring, but by the time we get to the 4th, the sun is squaring Saturn. We'll feel that on the 3rd and the 4th. But by Wednesday the 4th, there's a sense that we can feel the restriction pulling in. There's an ending of something. There's a limitation. We're running into a wall. And yet we're also willing to imagine our way beyond it, because Venus is making a sextile with Neptune. And this is kind of giving us the ability to go to our imagination and to dream of things that are beyond what's going on out there. Now, on December 5th, we have some harder aspects coming in. As we move to the 5th, we have Mercury making a half square with Pluto. We have Venus making a half square with Saturn. And we have the retrograde Mercury, which remains retrograde all the way through the 15th. The thing about these half squares is that they create anxiety. They create motivation to do something about our anxiety or our concern. Mercury Pluto is the concern for those things which are deeper, which are hidden, which are undercover, which are secrets and things that are coming out, but emotionally volatile energy can really create the beginning of an evolutionary or transformational process. At the same time, on the 5th, we have Venus making a half square with Saturn. And this is like bumping into that wall that we already began yesterday with the Sun square to Saturn. So there's some difficult energy here. There's some hardship cooking. There's some stuff going on that may be uncomfortable. The Mercury cazimi, or conjunction, with the Sun is also very important. That actual cazimi, the exact conjunction, the perfected conjunction, occurs at 6:17 p.m. Pacific time. And that is a time at which we get to express what's in our heart center. Communication and will are lined up, but it's retrograde, so it may feel as if there's too much to say. It's hard to get it out, but it's a really good time to stretch and to incorporate a way to move the energy out beyond the self. That's on the 5th. By the 6th, we now have an important event that, again, we may have been feeling since the 1st of the month, because Mars has been slowing down in order to begin its retrograde period. And Mars turns retrograde well, first of all, it does it about every other year, a little bit less than every other year. Mars's station begins on December 6th, and it turns retrograde, and it begins moving direct again on February 23rd. So this is an extended, about an 8-week period, a 10-week period. That's really a time where our energy pulls in. Remember, retrogrades, the planet energy is louder because the planet is as close to Earth as it gets. If you look at Mars in the sky, it'll look redder, angrier than it normally is. It's a time when our energies can actually get so profoundly red that things explode. We need to pay attention when Mars is retrograde. I'll have a lot more to say about that mid-month and then on the January and February reports. But Mars's turn retrograde is significant because it's also being re-emphasized by the fact that on the 6th, we also have the Sun now making a half square with Pluto. And again, this is about boundary issues kind of melting or dissolving that force us to evolve. We're running into those places where consciousness and unconscious meet. Things come up from hidden realms. We have to face our demons. This may not be fun, but but it can be very, very productive. And we're moving into a period of time when, not only is the sun making that half square to Pluto, but now Mercury is making a square to Saturn. Remember, the sun squared Saturn on the 4th. The month begins a bit rough in a way that it's holding our energy back. And I think December as a month feels like we're not making as much progress as we would like to. But I think the real progress here is going to be inner work. The real progress is about what's happening on some kind of latent level with now Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde. Some of the outer planets are moving direct. Most of them are, including Pluto now moving well into the 1st degree of Aquarius. Saturn moving direct. Chiron still retrograde. And Uranus retrograde, but Jupiter direct. There's kind of a mishmash of energy, but it may feel like we're not making as much progress as we would like to make. This is now December 6th. The other thing that occurs on December 6th, but not until later in the day, is that Venus moves from Capricorn into Aquarius. You can see at noon here that Venus is at roughly 29.5 degrees of Aquarius. But Venus will move into Aquarius Venus moves into Aquarius Seattle time at 10:13 p.m. And then actually, because Pluto is still at the 1st degree at 0 degrees of Aquarius, if we move the chart ahead to tomorrow, and whenever I refer to today and tomorrow, it's always the chart that's on the screen. Today, December 6th. Tomorrow, December 7th is now today. And today you can see that by noon, Venus has passed Pluto. And that exact conjunction occurred at 6:08 a.m. Pacific time. And this is about an intensification of emotion. Our values and what we want and what's important to us is much deeper now, and there's a concern that anything that's superficial is not important. And it may make some conversations difficult, especially because today the sun opposes Jupiter, and this turns everything bigger. This makes things seem bigger. We may be more confident even. We may, in a conversation with someone, we may be more inclined to go to those hidden places where the Venus-Pluto conjunction would normally keep things hidden. We bring things out into the open, and then we have to deal with it. Not a bad transit, but not necessarily one that's all fun and games, even though the sun opposed Jupiter might give us that feeling that everything is cool, everything is easy. And also today, Neptune, which has been retrograde, Neptune actually turns direct. And this is a really slow process. Neptune barely moves anything through the whole month. But Neptune moves so slowly that it's not about today. It's about a gradual building of Neptune's energy over the days, weeks, and months ahead, where imagination and creativity and even illusions are going to kind of creep back into the picture. Maybe not that they've ever really left. By the way, we can also see that the moon has now moved through Aquarius. It's in Pisces on the 7th, and on the 8th, the moon is going to line up with Saturn and then Neptune. It will move into Aries early on December 9th. That's Monday. And on the 9th, we don't again have major aspects, but we have the sun pushing toward a trine with Chiron. And that, again, like Mercury's retrograde trine to Chiron, is about healing. And here we have the opportunity on the 9th. We have an opportunity to use our being, to shine light on those areas that may be in need of attention or need of something that we need to learn or something that we need to teach. And it may be a potential for healing energy. That is Monday the 9th. As we move to the 10th, I'm sorry, that perfects. We're feeling it on the 9th, but it perfects on the 10th, actually in the morning at about 9:49 a.m. On the 11th, the Sun makes a half square to Venus. That half square to Venus is the only hard angle that Venus can make with the Sun, because it never gets far enough away to make a square. And here we may have some disruption about what we like and what we want versus who we are and really where we want to go. Doesn't have to be a significant aspect, but it certainly can be an interesting one. And that's exact on the 11th, actually midday. And as we move to the 12th, now we have Venus opposing Mars. We have a bunch of stuff on the 12th, actually. We have Venus opposing Mars, and that can be exciting and feisty and energetic in a relationship. It can be creative, but it also can be problematic because remember that Mars is retrograde. We may have too much heat or too much assertion or anger, even if we can keep things playful, or if we cannot remember to keep our ego out of the issue, then in fact we can actually have a lot of fun with this and do kind of really cool things. That's on the 12th. We also have the Sun making a square and a half with Mars. That's coming off of its half square to Venus yesterday afternoon. And so there can be a bit of relationship stuff here, and you just have to move through it. This is not long-lasting stuff, and it can be very exciting, but it also can be kind of a little bit of ego skirmish stuff. And of course, we're also moving closer and closer to the full moon here that is exact on December 15th. But back here on the 12th, we also have Jupiter making a square and a half with Pluto on the same day. And so there's some deeper energy coming out in the open. It may not be easy. The one thing that is the saving grace is that retrograde Mercury is making a sextile with Venus, which means that even if things are difficult, if we keep a loving feeling, if we keep remembering compassion and kindness, things can work out in a really positive way. That's the 12th. On the 13th, we have no direct aspects except the moon moves into Gemini. By noon, the moon is at 1 degree of Gemini, which means that it will be moving opposite Mercury, which is in Sagittarius. And then by tomorrow, the 14th, the moon will line up with Jupiter. There's some optimism here midday on the 14th. And yet what's really going on here is that we're moving closer and closer to the moon, the full moon that occurs at 1:01 a.m. on December 15th in Seattle. And at this full moon at 23 degrees Sagittarius and 53 minutes, we can see that at the full moon, the moon is in Gemini. It's a Gemini full moon. So our head is full of ideas and thinking, and it's very important to understand, though, that this full moon is the closest aspect of this full moon is the moon is coming into a square with Neptune, and the Sun is coming into a square with Neptune. Now, the moon square to Neptune is perfected in just maybe hours after the new moon. So the energy of the conflict of our thoughts and our ideas and our communication is actually conflicting with our dreams, our illusions. We may be learning things that we didn't know, and we also may be deluding ourselves or others. We have to be careful about what we think is real, especially because the Sagittarius Sun is going to come into its square to Neptune exactly by December 18th in the morning on December 18th. And that may bring this into focus, or maybe into lack of focus, where we become very aware that we really don't have the right information about what it is that we think we know. It's an important full moon, but we have to pay attention to not only what is real, but what we think is real. On the 16th, we can see that the moon has moved into Cancer by noon. It's moved into Cancer. And by the 17th, the moon moving through late degrees of Cancer. And we now see that Venus is making that exact semi-square or half-square with Neptune. Again, this is a confusing time. We're not exactly sure what's going on. Mercury has turned direct. Mercury turns direct just a few hours after the full moon. The moon is full at about 1 a.m. Pacific time on the 15th, and Mercury technically turns direct just after noon at about 1 p.m. It's not, even though we can make an exact time, 12:56 p.m., it's a gradual process, because Mercury slows down, stops, and then begins to build up speed. But now we're beginning to move things forward again. It'll take a few days to feel this. And what's important about this Mercury now moving direct is that it's going to replay some of the aspects that we've already had, that we've already seen. By the 17th at noon, we can see that the moon has moved through Cancer. It's now at about 27 degrees of Cancer. The energy is beginning to wane. The light is beginning to close down, kind of like it is around me as the sun is getting darker and darker. But on the 17th, we have Venus making a half square with Neptune. And that just re-emphasizes this whole thing about not knowing what's real, about being attracted to something and having it maybe not exactly what we thought. Or maybe the other side of it is that we're creating this magic, this sense of illusion, this sense of potential that is actually like the scaffolding, invisible scaffolding that we build reality on. I mean, Neptune transits, especially when they're related to Venus, even when they're stressful, they can be tremendously exciting. So that's all important stuff. Now, the other thing that's building is right behind this. The sun is coming into a square with Neptune that you can see here on the 17th, but as we move to the 18th, we can see the moon's moving through Leo. It's lined up with Mars. They have created late last night, this Tuesday the 17th, and into the early mornings of Wednesday the 18th, some anger, some fiery, some feistiness. Especially, we can start an argument or a discussion or even a little bit of a skirmish that may be based on wrong facts. Why do I say wrong facts or not facts? Imagination, illusion, because by the 18th the sun is exactly squaring Neptune, and this again is about delusion and confusion, but it's also about spiritual awakening. That's on the 18th. On the 19th, we get a little bit of recovery from that, because now Venus is making an exact trine to Jupiter. Again, we may feel this coming for a few days also. In all of this, maybe this is just the holiday season building, but in all of this, there's this sense of optimism, a sense of, I love the potential of what could happen, even if everything's falling apart in the present moment, even if things are complicated, even if the political environment is wrong for you. This is all part of waves within waves. There's stuff going on out there, and there's stuff going on in here. And I think that the 19th is a bit of a respite, maybe, in all of this, leading up to the solstice on the 21st. By the way, the moon will move through Virgo, into Virgo, in the morning, early hours of the morning on the 20th. And by the 21st, we have the sun tipping into Capricorn. We're looking at a chart here for noon on December 21st, but the actual moment of the solstice is just after midnight Pacific time. It's 1:20 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's the moment that the sun enters Capricorn. That's the summer solstice south of the equator, and north of the equator, that's the winter solstice. This is the moment of the darkest night of the year, the longest night. This relates to the whole mystery and magic of the Christmas star, which I'm sure many of you know is an astrological phenomenon, most likely a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that occurred in 4 BC. But the real fact of the matter is that there's something here about the planting of the seed in the darkest of times, the deepest of winter. I know that in Australia and South Africa and in any place south of the equator or South America, this is your summer solstice, but the imagery comes from the northern hemisphere, as does astrology as we practice it. And so it's important to understand this solstice as a time of that going inward and making the deepest wishes and that whole sense of the potential returning of the light that is December 21st. Also on the 21st, we have the moon has moved into mid-Virgo, and as such the moon is opposite Saturn in Pisces. That occurred earlier in the day, and it will move into an opposition to Neptune by tomorrow, the 22nd, early in the day, and then it will move into Libra by noon, actually just prior to noon. And I think, though, that by the 22nd, where the energy is beginning to shift, Mercury is gaining a little speed, things are moving forward. We're now caught up for many people in the holiday rush and the Christmas rush, all the things you need to do before the end of the year. By the 23rd, we can see that the nodes, which are still in Aries and Libra, they're moving backward. They will in early 2025 move into the axis of Pisces and in Virgo, but right now the sun is at what we call the bending. There's this chance of giving more light to what's going on, almost like if we didn't do it in the past, if we didn't get it done, when the sun reaches that square, that 90-degree angle to the nodal axis, it's like a moment when we're given an opportunity to do something that maybe we missed last time around, maybe we didn't do. This is an opportunity to make things happen. And of course, this is on Christmas Eve. And so one of the things that we can make happen, perhaps, is spreading a little magic and a little bit of beauty. But we do have a problem, or we do have a situation that has been building all week, and it's exact on Christmas Eve day. And that is that we're getting an exact square between Jupiter, the planet of expansion, and Saturn, the planet of contraction. Jupiter and Saturn is a 20-year cycle, and therefore its conjunction, which was back at the end, around Christmas time in 2020, which was called a great conjunction because it changed elements, and there's a lot on the net that you can find about how important a great conjunction is, and we know what was going on then. But this is the 90-degree angle because the full moon aspect, the Jupiter opposition to Saturn, occurs in 2030, because Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions and oppositions occur on the decade years 2000, 2010, 2030, 2040, 2050. And so this is halfway between 2020 and 2030, and we have this Jupiter-Saturn square actually happening 3 times, and it's kind of the pressure to grow, Jupiter expand, and yet the containment of Saturn pulling it in. You can think of Jupiter optimism, Saturn pessimism. You can think Jupiter expansion, Saturn contraction. You can think Jupiter liberal, open, progressive thinking, Saturn conservative caution, holding the status quo or going back to the past thinking. One of these is not healthy without the other, but what happens at the squares is we get maximum interference between the two of these elements, and this happens 3 times, and so we're in the middle of these 3 actual exact perfected squares. The first was leading into the presidential election in the United States, and it was exact in mid-August, actually August 19th. The second of the 2 of these is exact, and it's exact at about 2 p.m. on Christmas Eve day. And the third and final exact square will be on June 15th in 2025. So this is a process that we're in the middle of, and you can think of this kind of expansion, contraction. It's like breathing. Breathe in, lungs expand. Breathe out, lungs contract. And it's Jupiter, Saturn, Jupiter, Saturn. And we're at that point of conflict between the 2 where one changes into the other, and we can feel that certainly globally, economically, politically, and it's not going to be over for a while because we're in the midst of this experience, in the midst of this aspect. December 24th, that's really the most significant thing. And also we can see that the moon's moving through late Libra, so that by Christmas Day the moon is in Scorpio. It makes a sextile to the sun early in the day, in the morning, Pacific time. But this is about a bit of sober, intense meaning. We're looking maybe for the inner reality of how we can find our boundaries to make things work for us in spite of, or even along with, what's going out there in the outer world. That it doesn't matter what side of any issue you're on, there's things out there that are pretty crazy and uncomfortable and difficult, and I think that we're getting a little bit of respite again on Christmas Day. On top of that, we're coming into some Mercury. Remember, Mercury's moving forward now, and it's repeating aspects that it already made. And by December 26th, Boxing Day, we have Mercury making an opposition to Jupiter, but remember, Jupiter squaring Saturn. So now our mind is tied up in these big thoughts, this optimism, this confidence, this expansion. That's the opposition, Mercury's opposition to Jupiter, but at the same time it's squaring Saturn, and we're thinking of all the obstacles to where we want to be and where we want to get to, and all the things in the way, and it's kind of a conflictive day. We may feel some of this for a few days before, but I think that the day after Christmas is the heavier day, and it really is even leading up to toward the end of the month when things get even a bit ropier, as the moon moves through Scorpio into Sagittarius by Friday the 27th, and Venus squares Uranus on the 27th. That can be exciting, but it's also kind of, again, we're activated to want things that we don't have, that we can't have, and we reach for it. That may work out, it may not. Sometimes we want things that we just say can't do it, but if we do, it may have ramifications that are complicating. That is on the 27th. It's also tremendously exciting because Venus stimulates Uranus, that freedom, that awakening. It's like electrical charges through that Venus part of our chart that is what we desire and what we want. And so it's an intriguing day, and like I say, it's not without its intensity, but it also can be quite exciting, and perhaps as it stands alone, not necessarily stable, but it implies some movement. At the same time, Mercury is coming into a half square with Pluto, and remember, we had this just last, as Mercury was moving direct, we had Mercury making that half square to Pluto back on December 5th. And so now, again, this is communication stuff that's deep, it's intense, it's powerful, not negative, but it's stuff that is not necessarily residing on the surface. Now Mercury's direct, we get to express it perhaps more readily. That's on the 28th. Also, we're moving into a point where Chiron, which has been moving retrograde, is now stationing. It stations direct on the 29th. And I think this is a turning point in expressing what we're feeling about what is wrong with ourselves, with our loved ones, our own wounds, and learning how to compensate or overcome them. And this can be a very powerful period of time, but I don't necessarily think that this affects today. It's a deeper, longer term rhythm. And in fact, we don't often hear talk about Eris much, but Eris is Mars's sister, is a newly discovered planet or planetoid or Plutoid. It's like Pluto, and it's out past Pluto. It moves very slowly, and Eris was Mars's sister, and sometimes referred to as the goddess of discord. But the discord that she creates is always in search of a higher harmony. Chiron over 2025 will be moving toward and joining up with Eris, and we can see here that Chiron is quite close to Eris. It's moving toward it, but that will be a 2025 issue that we'll talk more about. That is the 29th. Mercury also making that square and a half. Remember, it made a half square to Pluto yesterday on the 28th, and today on the 29th it makes a square and a half to Mars, and this can be again disruptive communication, and this is leading us into the moon's shift into Capricorn, and the moon actually shifts into Capricorn on December 29th in the evening at about between 8:30 and 9 o'clock p.m. on December 29th, and that's moving toward the new moon, and the new moon is at 2:26 p.m. This new moon at 9 degrees of Capricorn, just barely almost 10 degrees of Capricorn, is significant for a number of reasons. It's the new moon that is attached to Mars moving retrograde and Mercury moving direct. It sets a different energy into motion. It also has that Mercury, which is now moving toward a trine with Chiron. You can see here Mercury is 18.5 degrees of Sagittarius, Chiron at 19 Aries, and Mercury will catch up to that trine by 11:41 p.m. tonight on December 30th. It's part of the New Year energy of talking about what's wrong in a way that can be healing rather than harming. And we close the year with a bit of, I don't want to say quietness, but there's not a lot going on specifically here. And yet we're coming into a time in January where there's so much happening. I'm going to talk about a lot of the transition of the end of December into the beginning of January at the mid-month update, again, that I'll publish right around the solstice, right around the 19th or 20th in there once I'm back in my home office without the restraints and the limitations that I have here in Goa. I know this has been a bit different than usual. I hope it does the trick for you. I hope you get something out of this, and I look forward to talking to you from a more familiar environment for me, and one where I have more tools at my disposal. Thank you all very much for your support. For those of you who don't find me on the mid-month update, I wish you as magical and blessed holiday season, solstice period, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Christmas, Yuletide as possible. And I just would like to remind all of us that at this time of year, more than any other time of year, no matter how cosmically we think, this is the time to pull in. This is the time to spread love and kindness and compassion locally, because that's where global healing will come from. It will come from the spreading of that person to person to person to person. It will not come top down from government, from structure, from treaties. It will come from individual heart to individual heart. That's my Christmas message. That's my holiday season message. That's my Hanukkah message of freedom from oppression. But that freedom for oppression is not just for any one tribe or any one point of view. It includes everyone on the planet. And I know many people struggle with that because other people's freedom feels like it attacks yours. This is what we have to work out. This is the big problem of our times, and we're going to either get it right all together or we won't. And I just wish you all the ability to find that place internally where you can be aware, conscious, loving, kind, compassionate, and think cosmically, act locally. And that's it for now. Best blessings. Peace out.